So, good morning. I'm going to discuss to you about the eukaryotic cells. So, let's start. So, eukaryotic cells are cells that contain a nucleus and organelles. The nucleus is an organelle found in eukaryotic cells. Inside, it is fully enclosed nuclear membrane. It contains the majority of the cell's genetic material. This material is organized as DNA molecules, along with a variety of proteins to form chromosomes. An organelle is one small part of a cell that has a very specific function or job. The nucleus itself is an organelle. Organelle is a diminutive organ from the idea that just as organs support the body, organelles support the individual cell. Eukaryotic cells are enclosed by a plasma membrane. So, organisms that have eukaryotic cells include protozoa, fungi, plants, and animals. These organisms group into the biological domain Eukaryota. Eukaryotic cells contain a variety of structures called organelles, which perform various functions within the cell. Examples of organelles are ribosomes, which make proteins, the endoplasmic reticulum, which sorts and packages the proteins, and mitochondria. Mitochondria produce the energy molecule adenosine triphosphate or ATP. They also have a true nucleus, which contains the genetic material, DNA, and is surrounded by a nuclear envelope. All of the organelles are stabilized and given physical support through the cytoskeleton, which is also involved in sending signals from one part of the cell to the other. In eukaryotic cells, the cytoskeleton is composed mainly of three types of filaments: the microtubules, the microfilaments, and the intermediate filaments. The gel-like substance that surrounds all the organelles in the cell is called cytosol. Cytosol is the liquid found inside of cells. It is the water-based solution in which organelles, proteins, and other cell structures float. Examples of eukaryotic cells: the plant cells, the fungal cells, the animal cells, and the protozoa. The plant cells are unique among eukaryotic cells. For several reasons, they have reinforced, relatively thick cell walls that are made mostly of cellulose they and help maintain structural support in the plant. Each plant cell has a large vacuole in the center that allows it to maintain turgor pressure. It is a pressure from having a lot of water in the cell and helps keep the plant upright. Plant cells also contain organelles called the chloroplasts, which contain the molecule chlorophyll. The important molecule is used in the process of photosynthesis, which is when a plant make its own energy from sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. The fungal cells. Like plant cells, fungal cells also have a cell wall, but their cell wall is made of chitin. Chitin is the same substance found in insect exoskeleton. Some fungi have septa, which are holes that allow organelles and cytoplasm to pass between them. This makes the boundaries between different cells less clear. The animal cells do not have cell walls. Instead, they have only a plasma membrane. The lack of cell wall allows animal cells to form many different shapes and allows for the processes of phagocytosis, which means cell eating, and pinocytosis, which means cell drinking. Animal cells differ from plant cells in that they do not have chloroplasts and have smaller vacuoles instead of a large central vacuole. The protozoa are eukaryotic organisms that consist of a single cell. They can move around and eat, and they digest food in vacuoles. Some protozoa have many cilia, which are small arms that allow them to move around. Some also have a thin layer called the pellicle, which provides support to the cell membrane. So, let's discuss now the prokaryotic cells. The prokaryotic cells are cells that do not have a true nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. Organisms within the domains bacteria and the archaea have prokaryotic cells. However, organisms with prokaryotic cells are abundant and make up much of Earth's biomass. Organisms that have prokaryotic cells are unicellular and are called prokaryotes. Prokaryotic cells can be contrasted with eukaryotic cells, which are more complex. A prokaryotic cell contains only a single membrane which surrounds the cell as an outer membrane. All of the reactions within a prokaryote therefore take place within the cytoplasm of the cell. While this makes the cell slightly less efficient, prokaryotic cells still have a remarkable reproductive capacity. A prokaryotic reproduces through binary fission. It is a process which simply splits duplicated DNA into separate cells, without any organelles or complex chromosomes to reproduce. Most prokaryotic cells can divide every 24 hours, or even faster with an adequate supply of food. Examples of prokaryotic cells: the bacterial cells and the archaeal cells. The bacterial cells are single-celled microorganisms that are found nearly everywhere on Earth, and they are very diverse in their shapes and structures. The cell walls of bacteria contain peptidoglycan, a molecule made of sugars and amino acids that gives the cell wall its structure and is thicker in some bacteria than others. Bacteria contain certain structures unique to them, previously mentioned, such as the capsule, flagella, and pili. Most bacteria have just one chromosome that is circular, which can range from about 160,000 base pairs to 12,200,000 BP. They also contain plasmids, which are small circular pieces of DNA that replicate independently of the chromosome. The archaeal cells are similar in size and shape to bacteria, and they are also unicellular. Since bacteria and archaea are the two types of prokaryotes, this, this means that all prokaryotes are unicellular. Some archaea are found in extreme environments such as hot springs, but they can be found in variety of locations such as soils, oceans, marshlands, and inside other organisms, including humans. Like bacteria, archaea can have a cell wall and flagella. However, the structure of these organelles is different. For example, archaeal cells do not contain peptidoglycan. All prokaryotic cells have a nucleoid region, DNA and RNA as their genetic material, ribosomes that make proteins, and cytoplasm that contains a cytoskeleton, which organizes and supports the parts of the cell. Prokaryotic cells are usually between zero point 0.1 to 5 micrometers in length. Prokaryotic cells have a higher surface area to volume ratio because they are smaller, which makes them able to obtain a layer amount of nutrients via their plasma membrane. Let's discuss now the difference between the eukaryotic and the prokaryotic. The broadest classification of cells is into two groups, the eukaryotic and the prokaryotic. There are a number of differences between these two types of cells, and the main difference is that eukaryotic cells have a double membrane bound nucleus which contains the cell's DNA. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus, only a nucleoid, which is the central open part of the cell where the DNA is found. Eukaryotic cells also have other large complex membrane bound organelles which prokaryotic lack. These include mitochondria, rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi complex, and in the case of plant cells, chloroplasts. Prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells are the two types of cells that exist on Earth. There are several differences between the two, but the biggest distinction between them is that eukaryotic cells have a distinct nucleus containing the cell's genetic material, while prokaryotic cells don't have a nucleus and have free-floating genetic material instead. Organisms with eukaryotic cells are called eukaryotes, and they include all animals, plants, protozoa, and fungi. Organisms with prokaryotic cells are called prokaryotes, and they include bacteria and archaea. For millions of years, prokaryotes were the only form of life on this planet. Eukaryotes came later as a result of the process of evolution. Another difference between eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells is their size. Eukaryotic cells are generally larger than prokaryotic cells. Eukaryotes are mostly, although not entirely, multicellular organisms, whereas prokaryotes are always single-celled or unicellular organisms. Examples of unicellular eukaryotes include amoebas, paramecium, and yeast. The structure of the DNA in eukaryotic cells is different from that in prokaryotic cells. In the nucleus of eukaryotic cells, DNA forms tightly bound and organized chromosomes. Prokaryotic cells contain just a single loop of stable chromosomal DNA stored in the nucleoid. The nucleoid is not a structure, but the area where the DNA is found. Both types contain ribosomes, but eukaryotic cells are bigger and more complex and bound by membrane. Most eukaryotes reproduce sexually. The offspring have genetic material that is combination of the parent's genome. Prokaryotes, however, reproduce asexually. Their offspring are clones. The parent cell which came about through binary fission. And that ends my discussion. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.